Good afternoon. My name is Henry Bonilla. I've had the pleasure of meeting a whole lot of you in this room over many years attending this conference. As you know, my life connection with TRIO began when I was 17 years old. And I got to tell you, Stephen, it's pretty cool. I know there are a lot of TRIO graduates out there that have gone on to some good things, but I had a fabulous career in television news and Congress, and look at you, the history you're making and will continue to make. So TRIO works. We are two living examples. The group is excited to be with you here today, as you can tell from the reaction. And if you wouldn't mind, first, if you could share your TRIO experience and how that helped you work through a difficult time with your education, and how it has helped you have the impact that you've already had politically and continue to have.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here. And I should have known you had a television career before Congress, because you command a lot of attention, but it's great to be here, and welcome to Washington, D.C. Thank you for your dedication as educators and advocates for students, particularly first-generation students who are pursuing their ability to perform with academic excellence at institutions of higher education all across the country. For me, as was indicated, and big shout out to the Nevada delegation of TRIO folks that are here. But I am a proud TRIO alumnus. I would not be where I am today without the foundations of my education. It was actually a high school teacher and a counselor that approached me in my junior year of high school and asked me what my plan was after I graduated high school. And I didn't have a plan. And they both encouraged me to apply for college, that I had something that they saw in me that they felt should be further cultivated. And it was because of that encouragement that I even believe that I deserve to be in college. So they gave me some instructions about, how to initially apply and go through the selection process, but also the financial piece of it, which was really the biggest barrier for me at the time. Even if I got in, how would I pay for it? I was raised by a single mother. I'm the oldest of four, and at that time, I was really taking on a lot of responsibility with my younger siblings. But I believed in what they said, that I was worth it, and that my education was worth it. And once I realized that education beyond high school was something I wanted, it was worth taking the initiative. But it was TRIO that helped me once I got to the university to really understand the support that I needed to be there. During my freshman year of college, I got the news that unfortunately far too many people across our country get. My father was shot and killed when I was 19 years old. During my freshman year in college. And that news struck me to my core. When I came home to attend his funeral, I also thought, unfortunately, because of some of the circumstances at the time, that other family members could be in a similar situation. But I had to decide for myself that I didn't want that for my future. And so both at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, at the College of Southern Nevada, where I took classes, and at the University of Nevada, Reno, where I ultimately graduated from, it was TRIO and the programs and the people that run these programs that really helped me at a critical time. When I was ready to give up, when I was struggling in classes, when I didn't know how I would afford the next semester's tuition, let alone whether I would have the books I needed for the classes I was already enrolled in. That's the reality for far too many of our students today. And it's why, I'll never forget my experience growing up and the importance to make college more affordable for everybody, but especially those whose it's their first experience, maybe the first in their family, to actually pursue education beyond high school. And so for me, it was the TRIO programs and the Upward Bound programs that gave me that hope, the support, the guidance, and even the correction to get back on track. So I because of my father's death, I made the decision to come back from Reno to Las Vegas to help take care of my younger siblings. And after a year of realizing that the strain of working 2 jobs, going to school, helping to support my younger siblings, that was not sustainable, I ultimately got to the point where I returned to the University of Nevada, Reno. And that is when TRIO really undergirded me with the support I needed to take the classes that challenged me and to finally determine my degree and all the things that come with actually completing. We talk a lot about getting kids in school, but we have to talk as much about getting them to complete with their degree and their certifications.
Stephen, your story is very compelling, and these educators, they communicate throughout the year, but at this national conference, they interact personally, and it's an incredibly inspirational and motivating environment every year to see them all come together. And for them to hear your compelling story, it helps them as well, because funding is tight, other logistics are difficult at universities, but all the educators here know that they make that little extra effort, and there could be another Stephen Horsford out there, in the future, and that means the world to these educators here today. One thing that I have said, this is not an official position of COE or TRIO, but I have always felt that someone like you or me has a greater opportunities to succeed after you get through the TRIO program, because what you go through makes you tougher. Absolutely. And when you get knocked on your you can get up again, and there's some dark days that you have to get through. And I believe that when educators help pull a TRIO student through, that you're producing an American that has more strength out there than perhaps someone that had a lot of stuff handed to him, if you will. Mm-hmm. I wonder how you feel about that.
Perseverance is a strength. Mm-hmm. It's a skill. Mm-hmm. And I wish that we focused more on people's assets through struggle than the deficits. I didn't tell you the story about my dad for you to feel sorry about me. It's a lived experience that I went through, and sadly a lot of people have to experience. Coming from a single parent and a poor, lower socioeconomic status, I didn't know any different. But you get to college and you realize, I guess my life wasn't exactly the same as some of my peers. But that doesn't mean that I can't learn. It doesn't mean that I can't persevere, and it doesn't mean that I can't graduate and contribute and offer something great to other people and to our community. And we've got a whole lot of talented people in colleges and universities and community colleges across the country that have a lot of purpose. They just need someone to believe in them, to give them an opportunity and a shot, and the support and the resources. And that's what you all represent. And that's why whenever there are these discussions about cutting programs or rolling back investments in TRIO or Upward Bound or Gear Up or any of these programs, I'm one of the first ones to say no, because it's the people who are impacted by these decisions. And it's the people who need them the most. So again, I have to thank you for the advocacy that you bring. You bring it for students who are immigrants or children of immigrants. My mother came to the United States as an immigrant when she was 12 years old, and was undocumented for many years and became a legal permanent resident, and just last year became a U.S. citizen. I have to finish the point, though, because in the course of her life experience, she didn't graduate from high school initially, but she went back and got her GED. When she went up to take her U.S. citizenship test, one of the questions on the test is, who's your congressman? Yes, she lives in my district. She got that question right. But she also got to vote for the first time in the last election. And after more than 50 years not being able to participate fully, she got to vote not only for me, but for other people. And she had a lot of questions. Where do you stand on this? How are you going to protect my Medicare and Social Security? What are you doing for my grandchildren to make sure they have a good access to education? You know, a lot of questions. So I fortunately met her expectations, but the point I'm trying to make is we have a lot of gifted people, immigrants, first-generation students, students of color, students from different disability situations, learning and physical. And we need an education environment that is accepting of everyone, that values the diversity, the equity, and the inclusion that everyone brings. And at a moment when these things are under attack politically, it's time for educators and education to defend one of the cornerstones of our democracy, and that is access to education in all of its forms and in all of its levels.
So after you got your education, you proceeded into a career of politics. And I know, having been through it myself, that state politics, federal politics can be pretty brutal at times. And tell us what you learned going through your education as a TRIO student to prepare you for some of those tough battles to accomplish politically as you have.
Well, before I got into politics, I did run the largest job training program in Nevada, the Culinary Training Academy and Nevada Partners. And it was, again, my experience as a TRIO alum and a participant that helped me understand the role that community-based and nonprofit-based organizations also play in reaching students from marginalized communities who don't always know that they're worth investing in through skills and education. This is what's informed my life's work. I remember that as a student at the University of Nevada, Reno, I actually went to the legislature to testify against all the tuition increases that were being proposed, because every tuition increase made it harder for students like me to stay in school. And I remember testifying that what is the role of state government if it's not to provide educational opportunities to community colleges and state universities in particular? And if the burden is going to be shifted so much on students and their families, you know, who else is there to help support us? And it was the TRIO experience that taught me that taught me that I had a voice, that I could speak up for myself, that I could demand change. And so when I went to the legislature, unfortunately, when I got elected to the legislature and when I became majority leader, we had the worst budget crisis in our state's history. And there were proposals that were being made to cut programs, including education and higher education, by 25 and 30% across the board. They would have had to close entire campuses and programs in departments. And it was my job to find a solution that was the alternative to those draconian cuts, and to work across party lines to reach consensus to get something else done. We did it. It was the first time in Nevada history, but that taught me, as a TRIO alum, as someone who advocated as a student, that tuition increases and putting that burden of college expense on the backs of students and families, that's not a winning solution. It's not good for the economy. It's not good to invest in the diversifying of our workforce, the demand for a more skilled workforce, let alone it's the right thing to do to invest in people. It's just bottom line, the right thing to do. But I learned that. I learned that as a TRIO participant, and it carried through to the legislature and now here in Congress.
And that leads to a related question. Again, all these great educators from every corner of the country are here this week, and when they hear it from you directly about how important it is for them to be active politically in a nonpartisan way, because TRIO has always been supported in a bipartisan way, but the importance of them, Stephen, to be active with their elected officials, most important federally, because TRIO is federal, however, sometimes even locally, because as you pointed out, the crisis can be at universities that are funded by state governments, but tell them how important it is for them to be involved with in the political contacts that they have, state and federal.
Well, first is you have a right to participate and be heard because you're constituents. And you have a right to petition your government and the elected officials in it to represent you and your priorities. There are people who come to us every day who want to talk to us about their priorities, and you're no exception. So be heard, not only here and this week in Washington, D.C., particularly with the members and the staffs, because the staffs also determine a lot, as you know, of what gets done and the legislative agenda, but also back home in your district, in writing letters and emails and posting social, not just on the kind of arbitrary points about why education matters, but real stories that you come into contact with. You all have stories in here beyond the story that I shared about myself, that if more people understood, oh, this is why the investment in TRIO programs matters. This is the return on investment that we're getting when we put our resources behind. And yes, it may be a federally funded program, but a lot of this does get administered at the state level. And if the states are balancing where to put resources, they should be leveraging the federal investment with state and local dollars, not trying to supplant funding or take resources away or, make you have to fight to fend off the battle budgets that are happening here on a federal level. We're days away from a potential government shutdown, sadly, because of gridlock and partisan partisanship, I'll just say. I'm going to be diplomatic.
We have more in common.
But the point is, you have to get in the face of your elected officials and tell them why these things matter. I don't work for the federal government. I work for the 700,000 people in Nevada's 4th District who elected me to do a job, and that job is to deliver for them the things they need from their government and the agencies that are represented. And the more that I hear from my constituents about their priorities, the more that it empowers me to do what they say they want. And I'll give you a little secret. If you hear from 50 constituents on an issue, that's a lot. That's a lot. There's 1,800 people participating in this conference. If we hear from 50 people on an issue, you better believe that member is going to be responding. They're going to be trying to figure out how to address it, because those 50 people probably represent 50,000. Because if 50 people took the initiative to contact their member and talk about an issue or say why TRIO deserves to be funded, then there's a whole lot more people behind it. But if those 50 people don't do their part in raising the issue, then we think, oh, it's not a concern. Oh, you don't care about the cuts that are being proposed. Or we don't hear the stories about the benefit that you're providing. And so I would really encourage you in this moment to use your voice, to use the power that you have, to engage with the member and their staff, and to come at it not only with data, data's great, but from the human element of the people that you interact with every single day and the stories that are embodied in the work that you all do.
In just a moment, we're going to have a couple of questions from participants here today, Stephen, but we're going to just take a short moment to look at a video from another great champion of TRIO in the U.S. Congress, and that is Senator Ralph Warnock of Georgia. And he was hoping he could be here with us today, but he couldn't. But he wanted to make a video to have a message for you today. And if we could view that video real quick now, we'll be right back with more questions for Stephen.
Well, hello to the wonderful folks at the Council for Opportunity in Education's annual conference. I send my regrets that I cannot be there in person with you, as it is always so enriching to be with friends who are allies in pushing to making the bountiful gifts that a good education provides more accessible to all students. Know that every day I wake up humbled to represent you, to represent the Peach State in the United States Senate. It is a privilege to be a voice in the Senate, the world's greatest deliberative body, representing the greatest state, our state of Georgia. And if it were not for the skills I learned and the confidence I built as a participant, as a student in TRIO's Upward Bound program, I wouldn't be where I am today. I am acutely aware of how lucky I was that Upward Bound provided me the tools that propelled me to Morehouse College. So whenever I cast a vote in the Senate, attend a committee hearing, or speak with my colleagues, I'm always focused on expanding opportunity and making it possible for every Georgian to fulfill their goals. From working hard to lower costs for Georgia students and families, to pushing to make education more affordable, to fighting for stronger investments in TRIO, a program I know works, to pressing for more funding for historically Black colleges and universities. I'm doing all I can to uplift Georgians. America is a land of possibility, and your parents' income should never determine your outcome. Only in this country is my story even possible, which is why I'm working every single day to make sure kids who grew up like I did can thrive. And so I want to thank you for your work every single day. Thank you to the president of the Council for Opportunity in Education, Maureen Hoyler, Executive Vice President Kim Jones, COE Board Chair Joe Givens, and Sharante Maxwell, Assistant Director of Access Programs at the University of Georgia and President of the Southeast Association of Educational Opportunity Program Personnel. Thank you for everything you do, and know that I'll always be fighting to expand opportunities and create a brighter future for all of our Georgia kids. Keep the faith and keep looking up.
Boy, that's just very touching. Another real-life example of how TRIO works. So, Stephen, now we're going to take questions. We know that there are probably a couple of people who would like to either make a comment or present a question. We would ask that you step to the microphones that are placed in the aisles. And at this point, we're going to open it up for questions. I was going to say maybe they're completely happy with you. And
I'm certainly happy with what I've heard and seen so far. Mark Jackson from Michigan. And I ask this of just about every politician I get a chance to ask about, because I hear it in the sound bites all the time about, I'm the one who reaches across the aisle and we need to work together. Manchin was talking about it this morning and I had my opinions about that. Can you give examples of any progress? Because we've been in gridlock for now, what, 6 years? In so many critical issues. So can you provide some examples of areas where you've had reached across the aisle and maybe even had some success?
Yeah. Well, thank you. Michigan, I think, is a great example of a place where, again, people have to work together to get things done. I can speak to some specific examples that I've worked on. So I'm a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is half Republican, half Democrat. We meet every few weeks when we're in session. We talk about our legislative priorities, but specifically, and bipartisan, to be clear, doesn't mean every Republican and every Democrat have to agree. It's finding those who can reach common ground on an issue like we did on the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, the first time in 30 years that we passed a comprehensive gun safety bill through Congress and the president signed it into law. It includes a provision that I advocated for from my Break the Cycle of Violence bill to invest $250 million into community violence intervention, something that a Senate Republican actually worked to increase the amount on when it went to the Senate. Another example, while we didn't get as many as we wanted, is the bipartisan infrastructure and investment law. Not only does it fund roads, bridges, and highways, but it's also providing funding to broadband in communities all across this country, urban and rural, that need access to the internet in order for students to learn. I represent a district that covers 50,000 square miles throughout Nevada, and I have counties that literally do not have adequate broadband access or infrastructure, but because of that law, now are getting that investment. So those are two examples. Sadly, right now in the House in particular, we have a dynamic where there's a far right faction that's controlling those, I would just say, in the mainstream, including the speaker. And because of that, we're not able to get anything concretely done, including passing a federal budget, which is required for us to maintain federal services for our constituents. But we'll keep finding ways, because we have to work with the people we can work with, because that's what constituents in my district and all across America expect.
Thank you.
thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Jakeisha Wiley, Rutgers University, New Brunswick, and I'm a proud Trio alum as well. I think we missed you last night, by the way. But as an alum, I wrote my question out. As an alum, what buzzwords are you or others looking for from us that not only tie Trio to current events, but even turn one into a champion?
Well, look, the current events right now that I'm focused on, that I believe many of us should be focused on, are defending our democracy. Democracy is under attack in our country. And when you ask, well, what is democracy? It's not just some ambiguous thing that applies to certain people. It's the institutions of our schools, of the free press in order to get accurate information, not misinformation or disinformation. It's the courts that are making more and more decisions about the quality of our life, from whether or not we can access health care to whether or not a student can attend a college based on affirmative action. There's still affirmative action in this country, by the way. There's affirmative action for the privileged. There's affirmative action for legacy programs. There's affirmative action for people who will write big checks. So they didn't strike down affirmative action. They struck it down for a certain population of people, And affirmative action was never the ceiling, it was the floor to correct for past wrongs of discrimination from the enslavement of black people in America to indigenous people to others who've been denied equal access, particularly to an education in this country. So you cannot expect a child to meet every criteria for your application or admission process when you haven't provided them the ability to learn in their own communities. And we should reject the idea, we should reject this idea that, this is only on individuals. No, these are federal policies or state and local policies that have denied equal opportunity to things like education and other social determinants like healthcare and food and jobs and housing, which also determines an individual's ability to pursue an education. And it's the most fundamental right of all, which is our right to vote. And I always ask this question: if our right to vote wasn't so important, and if it wasn't so powerful, why would they spend so much time trying to suppress it?
Thank you so much.
As we await another question, Stephen, your history before politics, as you mentioned, was with the Culinary Training Academy, and you saw a lot of people of all ages that were trying to break into a particular profession that can be very skillful. People sometimes think that business might be routine or just anybody can do it, but they can't. So I think they'd like to hear about your experience in that area as well.
How many of you have been to Las Vegas by raise of hand? How many of you loved your experience in Las Vegas? Well, the reason is because we're known as the hospitality capital of the world, and now we're the hospitality, entertainment, and sports capital of the world. But the only reason we are that is because of the people who make it run, who make the industry run. And that's the hospitality workers. And so I ran the largest job training program for 10 years as the CEO. It's a joint labor management partnership. More than 40% of our participants were immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers. We had individuals who were either didn't finish high school or finished but did not pursue education beyond high school. Yes, we trained for professional cooks and sommeliers and bartenders, but we also trained for guest room attendants and house persons positions, which are really the entry level and engines of the economy. We have 140,000 hotel rooms in Las Vegas. Who makes up all those rooms? It's hardworking people. But guess what? Those jobs require skill too. And unfortunately in Las Vegas, because we're unionized, there are also good paying jobs with benefits like healthcare and pension and retirement. So I was really proud to lead that program. But what we always tried to do was to connect our student participants with other educational opportunities, because what we found is the guest room attendant would be coming in to get training, but she was really working to help make sure her child could get into college or get into a trade school, get into an apprenticeship. And so making sure that we were connecting individuals to kind of the ecosystem of what those resources are. I know we were talking before we came here, we had our CAEO programs from the university that would come to our job training facility and do outreach, because we were the program that served a lot of the population that also was eligible for the Gear Up and Upward Bound programs. We just needed to help people connect the dots. And that's where I would always encourage all of you, beyond your institution, get out into the community, make connections with faith-based organizations and community-based organizations and youth organizations and student clubs at high schools, because that's where you're going to get the next generation of people to participate. Don't wait for them to come to you. Go out and get them, because they're worth the engagement and the outreach, so that they can also participate in what you have to offer.
I think we have a young lady over here who's been very patiently waiting.
Hi, y'all. My name is Lauren Bothwell. I'm a student at Texas A&M University Galveston campus. We're a maritime school, definitely coming out of the way. We actually don't have a TRIO program at our school, so me and my vice president, Abby, are here to learn and engage. But I'm sure, as you know, Texas has been through a lot recently. Senate Bill 17 recently passed, and for those of you that don't know what that is, it restricts public universities from funding DEI initiatives. So we can't have diversity offices, we can't do a lot of stuff. Students aren't restricted, but restricting the funding and the faculty has an effect on students anyways. So from a student perspective, and then for these faculty that are here to advise students, I know we have a lot of people from Texas, what do you recommend we do, like to work around this or to reach out to lawmakers in an attempt to change things?
Look, I really appreciate you asking this question, and thank you for speaking up. Sadly, it's not only Texas, it's places like Florida and Virginia and a whole lot of other places, because these efforts to attack diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're coordinated, they're well-funded, and they're targeted. And like I said about voting, what are they so afraid of when it comes to providing access to diversity, equity, and inclusion? What is it that represents that's so offensive to governors and legislatures who are denying these opportunities? I'm chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. We are leading an effort along with others on ways to push back in this moment. You've got strong representatives in Texas who are working with us on ways to do that. But in the meantime, we do have to figure out a way to promote and defend diversity, equity, and inclusion. Let me ask this question. I talked about students with differing learning abilities. That's a part of inclusion. That's a part of DEI. They against that? Call them out on it. Ask them, why are they targeting certain individuals and or programs that are designed to help marginalized voices be heard in institutions? And there is nothing in the affirmative action decision that came down from the Supreme Court that warrants this type of attack on DE&I, other than an ideology that believes that we don't deserve to be in these spaces. They're wrong and we're right. I would direct you, there was just a Harris poll released. It was in President Biden's op-ed in the Washington Post, I believe. It was commissioned by the Black Economic Alliance. Over 70% of Americans support diversity, equity, and inclusion in all sectors: education, in corporate America, in government. So they are in the minority viewpoint. We're in the majority, but yes, we have to organize in order to fight back where they are making inroads to weaken or defund DE&I. And we need to go on the, I'll just say, we need to be more assertive and demand not only DE&I. That's like affirmative action. It's the floor, not the ceiling. It's a tactic, it's a tool. We want full equity in every educational institution. For women, for students of color, for students of differing learning abilities, because that is what America is about, providing opportunity for everyone, an equal opportunity. We're not asking for an advantage above others, but based on the history of our nation and the systemic racism and discrimination that has occurred, these are the tools and the strategies that will help provide a more equal and equitable playing field for everyone. So it's worth fighting for, it's worth speaking up about, and yes, write your legislator. Call your senators in Texas. Contact your state legislators and explain how their decisions are impacting students and family members that you see every day who are trying to do what? Get a quality education to better themselves, to better their families, to better our communities. What's wrong with that, and what are they so afraid of?
I think
Congressman Horsford, the online community is excited. They are thrilled. They are engaged, and because of how amazing you are. So many thumbs up, so many go-aheads, so many preach have been said. But there's an important question out here because someone is even more
I don't see that.
just amazed by you. They want to know, what advice would you give to a TRIO student who wants to pursue a career in politics?
I couldn't see them because I believe they're participating by Zoom. Is that correct, Jen? Okay. Did you hear the question?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the voice of God, as they say. we're looking. You know, when we say politics, and you know, I'd love your perspective on this. I never planned to be a congressman. I didn't want to be a politician. I wanted to serve my community and give back. Someone gave me an opportunity and a shot, and I feel an obligation to try to do that for others. That's why I decided to run. So if you have a similar passion for giving back to your community, find ways to do that. Yes, one way is through public service, but it's not the only way. If you want to be in public service, you know, my experience, I was an intern in the Nevada legislature. I volunteered on a campaign for someone that was running for governor so that I could learn what they did. I served in the student government at my university. And then when there was an opening in the state seat, Senate seat, where I lived, and the person had served for 32 years and they were retiring, I looked around and I said, why not me? I'm as capable, committed, concerned as the next person, and I believed that I had a voice and a perspective that deserved to be a part of the process at the state level. And then, yeah, one thing led to another. I became the leader of the state Senate, and then Nevada earned a 4th congressional district. But you know why I ran for Congress? Because I could do this full time. In the Nevada legislature, we have a citizen legislature. So I was managing my full-time job as CEO, serving as leader of the state Senate, raising 3 young children at the time. And I said, wow, I could serve my community 100% of the time, have the support of a dedicated staff that is committed as I am about working with people. Miguel Ayala is here from my office, and he has worked with us in the community and in our district. And so I'm like, yeah, that would be great. That's why I decided to run. And then I got here and I realized, yeah, I deserve to be here. And I'm as smart, as gifted, as talented as anybody. And my lived experience is unique and deserves to be heard in the halls of Congress, just like it deserves to be heard in the halls of state legislatures. So whoever you are, Zoom participant, find a way to get involved, to make change, to engage with a member who you are aligned with, and be mentored by them in order to get involved in the process. That's really all it takes, is wanting to make a difference in the lives of other people.
Sir.
D'Angelo Sands, Texas A&M University, Corpus Christi. In our respective states, and even here, we have a lot of newcomers, folks who are new to TRIO, but they're fired up just like the seasoned folks are. So here's my question. What strategies can be employed to effectively communicate with elected officials who are resistant to granting access or meeting with those of us that represent a difference of opinion to their platform?
Well, I can't ever imagine not accepting a meeting from a constituent. So you're saying there's a member's office or staff who's refused to meet with you?
Typically, we have members who may send a staff in their office.
Okay.
And typically is note-taking, but there are some strategies we'd like to employ even during the school year, where they're inviting them to our respective space, or whenever we return to our policy seminar.
Okay. Well, I would always take a meeting from a constituent.
Yeah.
And whether I did it or I had a staff member do it, I would make sure when it's a Nevada person, that information gets to me. But to your question on strategies, many of us who try to engage with our constituents love coming to speak to classes, particularly government classes, to talk about civic education, or even a topic, like AI or the law or something that maybe is more narrow, but engaging them in whatever way you can on campus, and then introducing them, if they don't know, the benefits of TRIO and the importance that it provides, particularly to first-generation college students and others. Before you come, I think it is important to make connection with the key person that you are trying to meet with, and to find out someone who that member listens to back home in their district. If it's not someone in your institution per se, maybe it's someone in the Rotary Club or a sorority or fraternity or some other connection that could possibly be made. What I have found is even those who are ideologically opposed, save a few, there are a few that I simply cannot waste my time or energy on. But even those who ideologically I disagree with, they're still good people. We just differ on our approaches. They're still willing to listen, and they sure should listen to a group as important as TRIO, because you're impacting the lives of the people that they represent. I think another tactic would be to encourage your participants and your students to do the same thing by writing letters, emails, post social. Just make it productive. Calling people out isn't the right way if you want to produce someone who's going to get on your side or get on board. But we monitor our social. We know when people are not happy, or there's a concern, or if someone said, I tried to meet with your office and I couldn't get in. Oh, but best believe we're going to get a meeting set if something like that gets posted on social. Yeah. So sometimes you have to ratchet it up, but I would say I didn't say ratchet, I said ratcheted it up. Y'all heard something completely different.
One thing to tie in to this question, 9 out of 10 members of Congress will meet with their constituents. Now, what some people run into once in a while is they may live on the edge of the district, or maybe they're attending school somewhere because they usually will ask, what is your home residence? Yeah. And the first thing they'll look at is, if they are, the light goes off and they try to make time. But if they don't live in the congressional district, they're not going to prioritize that. It's not to say they won't meet with you, but they're not going to prioritize you if you don't live in their congressional district. So you just got to keep that in mind. But sometimes, even if you don't live in a district, you can find somebody close by that does. And then that person can make the meeting and they can bring you along, and it works that way as well. I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I believe we have 5 minutes left, I'm told, so we can have one more question, and a lady right here.
I think over there. Right, that gentleman.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and then we'll have two more. We'll have, real quick, this one, and then I'm sorry I didn't see you because of the light shining at us, but I see you over there, and we'll go to you for the final question after this lady.
Hello, Vicki Hatter from Little Rock, Arkansas.
Yay.
Hey, so I have the fortunate pleasure of serving as a Upper Bound Director as well as serving on the school board. And you mentioned earlier about, I call it the defunding of education, where they're doing the cuts and things like that. And TRIO serves a very important role within education, particularly within that secondary area, because of the banning of books, because of just recently our governor wanted to say there's no more AP African American Studies to be taught right in the schools. But, you know, Little Rock, we are in other districts as well. We are continuing to do that. With TRIO, it is seen, right, as an opportunity, right, as we all know. My question to you is, with all of the defunding and the attacks on education, what is, out of the box, what is a role or a strategy that Upper Bound or other TRIO programs are able to play to fill in those gaps to where we are not going to have more educational casualties of children falling between those gaps?
Yeah. I'm going to take the question and then I'll.
Okay, he's going to take both questions at once and then answer both of them. Sir?
Okay, sure. My question is actually pretty similar. My name is Mr. O. I'm the director of TRIO programs for the Boys and Girls Club of Central Georgia. I'm going to take this off the stand if y'all don't mind. Okay, so my question was, with everything that's going on in Congress right now, specifically with the national debt, how confident are we that institutions like the Department of Ed and specifically TRIO services won't be affected by whatever decision comes from Congress's session in the upcoming week?
Well, we have the White House. So any bill that happens to pass out of the House, if it had cuts that were draconian cuts, we have the Senate, although it's split. You know, there are certain bills that will not be signed by the president. And I'm sure the advocates in this room will make sure that TRIO and the programs you all fight for continue to be funded at the levels they are. We actually had increased funding in the last Congress, 117th Congress, and I'm proud that when Democrats were in charge, we made programs like TRIO a priority. Yes, the government shutdown would be harmful to our entire economy, but unfortunately, we've been through this before, and everybody gets made whole at the end. That's not the way it should be, but you know, we don't, typically, we make everyone whole. On your question, thank you for being a school board member. School board members are probably in the toughest job of anyone in America right now. I would not want to be a school board member, but it's vitally important that we have dedicated people with lived experience and an important perspective to advocate on the best interest of children, of bringing the voice of educators and professionals into our school systems, and to make sure that we hold the line in this moment. So as chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, we launched an initiative called Democracy for the People. And we traveled to 12 cities over the last few months doing a summer of action in the spirit of the Freedom Summer movement, and it culminated at the 60th anniversary on the March on Washington. We've been in every region of the country, and we did town halls, youth forums, and we actually did organizing training in the cities where we visited. You can go to democracyforthepeople.org if you want to find out more information. This is a C4 activity. It's not about advocating for a party or a candidate. It's about advocating for issues. And one of the issues, again, under the Democracy for the People Summer of Action is on education and public education specifically. We understand that there are attempts to erase history, particularly Black history. The assertion that the enslavement of Black people was some type of a jobs program and is adopted and codified in a curriculum standard in the Department of Florida, or in the Department of Education in Florida, is wrong, and we're still working to try to overturn those efforts. But it's also the other attempts, the banning of books, the fact that Amanda Gorman's poem that was recited during the president's inauguration is now removed from libraries. This is what I'm saying when I'm saying there's attacks, and they're targeted, they're well-funded, and they're organized. These things aren't by accident. And the fact that they're happening in many places across the country shows you that there are roots that are taking up in different places. Well, we're not going to be silenced in this moment. We're not going to go back to the days where we're not able to teach our children the true meaning of what it means to be an American in all of its forms. And we're not going to deny certain forms of our history either. So I would invite you, actually, to participate with Democracy for the People. Again, you can go to democracyforthepeople.org. And more importantly than that, continue to share what you just shared about what's happening. Because even though you may not have a member of Congress or a governor who is going to advocate, know that the Congressional Black Caucus and the allied organizations that we work with, we're fighting everywhere on behalf of the people that we represent. The CBC does not only represent Black people. We represent 80 million Americans across the country. But we understand that when you lift up Black people, you lift up everybody. And so at a time when there are efforts to, attack the very existence of being Black or being a person of color or being a woman, there are those of us who are standing in the gap, as you said, educators are. And all of you have a role to play. And this is not political. You can say, I don't want to do that because that sounds political. This is about the very existence of the quality of life that we expect in any community for all people throughout our entire country, and in fact, throughout the world. Because not only is our democracy important to us here, it is the model that is lifted up around the world. And if we're weak here, then we're weak everywhere. And so, I would encourage people to share more information with us. Contact the Congressional Black Caucus. I'm coming to Little Rock. It's on our list to do something out there because I did not like the fact that AP African American history was being eliminated in the state because they think that that's somehow making other people feel less than. How do you think those of us that lived through Jim Crow, the mass incarceration of people today, feel? So we won't be silenced in this moment.
Congressman, thank you so much for being with us today.